2016, I was in 8th grade, 13 and full of life. I was in my last year of middle school, preparing for the transition to high school. I was pretty online, with my YouTube recommendations being filled with craft, gaming, and beauty content, alongside the viral videos of the time. Alicia Marie, Jeffree Star, RCL Beauty, Rosanna Pansino, Lord DIY, Smosh, iHas Cupquake, Shane Dawson, and PewDiePie were some of my favorite channels of the time. Okay. I've since grown away from these YouTubers, now preferring some similar content, but with less racist. As someone who primarily grew up in the 2010s, 2016 nostalgia hits me hard. It's like my version of my mom's 80s, meaning in 40 years I'll be reminiscing about fidget spinners. But hey, at least the Reagan policies stayed the same. According to GWI, 42% of Gen Z respondents report feeling nostalgic for the 2010s, a sentiment especially visible on TikTok, where obsession with 2016 has become its own trend. 2016 nostalgia content has been filled with mostly the internet culture of the time, sporting a lot of LA vibes because, as journalist Taylor Lorenz said in her video on the topic, a YouTuber moving to LA was seen as making it in the industry. YouTube and it as a revenue source was still pretty new, so the creators that lived in LA were the successful ones. But most importantly, they were the ones that everyone knew most. Beauty YouTube was huge, with Kylie Jenner lip kits, Morphe, Urban Decay eyeshadow palettes, and black eyebrows taking over the scene. On a separate platform, which would soon become TikTok, Musical.ly was creating internet celebrities like Jacob Sartorius and Lauren Gray. And how could we ever forget about Vine, shutting down a year later in 2017. Vine was where people like Curtis Connor, Liza Koshy, and Logan Paul, unfortunately, went viral, creating memes that unfunny millennials and Gen Zers alike still cling to this day for dear life. 2016 birthed Pokemon Go and the iPhone 6, helped popularize Snapchat and Instagram, and created an online culture that would be remembered for years to come. But it was far from sunshine and rainbows. Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and Hillary Clinton was a candidate. The UK government pushed through Brexit. The Zika virus was on the rise. 49 people were murdered in a hate crime at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Most tragically, Harambe was killed. Of course, 2016 looked different for everyone, and the commentary in this video will not only be very internet-focused, but also will be coming from the perspective of someone who was born in and lives in America. However, I hope that my commentary on nostalgia can still be somewhat relevant to your life. When we romanticize the past, we do a few things. 1, we erase the bad. 2, we don't live in the present. And 3, we ignore the future that we could build. Like people who idolize the 80s, those of us who are now wishing to go back to a better time are running the risk of forgetting history and ignoring not only the present, but also the future. Today, I want to explore all the impacts of nostalgia, both culturally and psychologically. What good can nostalgia do, and how can it hurt us? Let's take off the rose-colored glasses today and find out. Do you guys remember LPS? I have a whole box of them that I was going to pull out for this video to show all of you, but I didn't feel like getting it. So just picture it in your mind, okay? Littlest Pet Shop was one of my favorite toys as a kid, along with Shopkins, Swinkies, Zuzu Pets, Orbeez, Pillow Pets, and how could we forget Zoobles? Okay, maybe you forgot that one. From 2010 to the end of the decade, I went from primary school to a senior in high school. While I can remember a good amount of late 2000s cultural moments, the 2010s was a decade I mostly grew up in. In elementary school, our gym teacher would put on LMFAO's Party Rock Anthem while he'd make us do laps around the gym for 3 minutes. I actually still listen to LMFAO, along with a lot of other throwback songs from that era. They make me feel something. They make me feel nostalgic, giving me a sense of longing filled with bittersweet memories. Gangnam Style and What Does the Fox Say were also, unfortunately, huge songs at the time. Dynamite by Teo Cruz was a popular song sung on the bus ride home from school. One of my elementary school's rewards to us was playing Friday by Rebecca Black in the LGI on a Friday. One Direction was created in 2010, and What Makes You Beautiful was screened by young girls across the globe a year later. Most of my music exposure from the time was from my brother and my parents. My parents made me listen to classic rock and 80s pop, while my brother was big on 2000s rap and pop. I loved early Kid Cudi, MIA, LMFAO, Kanye West, David Guetta, and Black Eyed Peas because those are the songs my millennial brother listened to the most when we were younger. A lot of my experience came from this little thing. After my brother got an iPod Touch, this was handed down to me, and I listened to every song on this over and over until at least, say, 2015. Once he was done with his iPod Touch, I took that out and played every mobile game on Earth, from Angry Birds to Doodle Jump, Where's My Water, Fruit Ninja, and, of course, Temple Run. My first gaming console was the GameCube. The Fairly Odd Parents Shadow Showdown was a niche favorite of mine. We got a Wii soon after it came out, which is where I spent most of my time until I started playing more games on PlayStation. We can't forget about the DS either. PictoChat was how I flirted with my crush on the school bus. I could name so many niche games I played on there. Zuzu Pets, Pets Nursery 2, I Love Puppies, Tinkerbell Great Fairy Rescue, My Sims Kingdom. Of course, TV played a big role in my life too. iCarly, SpongeBob, Victorious, Big Time Rush, Zack and Cody, Shake It Up, and so on were shows that I watched consistently. Alongside my YouTube viewing habits, I watched a lot of TV as a kid. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to some of my experience. While some of the things that make me nostalgic are obviously huge cultural moments, others are more niche things shaped around my own life experiences. Nostalgia can be experienced by entire generations across the globe, but it is also, in essence, an individual experience, and often a privileged one. As Agnes Arnold Forster writes in The Guardian, nostalgia was first coined as a term and used as a diagnosis in 1688 by Swiss physician Johannes Hofer. Derived from the Greek nostos, homecoming, and algos, pain, this mysterious disease was a kind of pathological homesickness. It caused lethargy, depression, and disturbed sleep. Sufferers also experienced physical symptoms, heart palpitations, open sores, and confusion. For some, the illness proved fatal. Its victims refused food and slowly starved to death. Hepper, Ricci, Setikides, and Wildschut, 2012 Emotion, described nostalgia as a complex emotion that involves past-oriented cognition and a mixed affective signature. The emotion is often triggered by encountering a familiar smell, sound, or keepsake, by engaging in conversations, or by feeling lonely. When waxing nostalgic, one remembers, thinks about, reminisces about, or dwells on a memory from one's past, typically a fond, personally meaningful memory such as one's childhood or a close relationship. One often views the memory through rose-tinted glasses, misses that time or person, longs for it, and may even wish to return to the past. As a result, one typically feels emotional, most often happy, but with a sense of loss and longing. Other less common feelings include comfort, calm, regret, sadness, pain, or an overall sense of bittersweetness. While writing out all those things I grew up with, I felt nostalgic. I felt a longing for the past, a sadness for what I used to have in life, and a remorse for my younger self. Despite its conflicting emotions, nostalgia can be a positive thing in people's lives. It can make us feel more connected to others, less anxious, happier, and can help us with our sense of self, creativity, and optimism. In fact, it can even help with pain relief. 2 studies were conducted to examine the analgesic effect of nostalgia on different levels of pain. In the first, a person looked at nostalgic pictures and experienced relief from low-level thermal pain. But when researchers asked individuals to reflect on an event from their past, they experienced relief from both high and low thermal pain. On the flip side, though, nostalgia, individually and collectively, can be incredibly harmful. You can get stuck on regrets and what-ifs, and you can miss the present. Nostalgia can make our present reality feel worse, even if it isn't. Individually speaking, nostalgia walks a fine line of being good versus bad. But the collective focus on nostalgia is more often than not harmful. It's not necessarily a bad thing for someone to reminisce on the past. I personally love living in the past. I also have OCD. The 2026 is a new 2016 trend may seem innocent on the surface, but deep down, it's similar to other mass nostalgic trends online. I too miss those years because looking back at them, they seem better, more simple than my life today. But in reality, my life wasn't good then. I struggle with the same things that I do now. But looking back at it, it feels better than the present, even if logically, I know it wasn't. In psychology, there's something called rosy retrospection. As Psychology Today said, it is a well-studied cognitive bias. It happens because when we think about the past, we're more likely to think about people, events, places, and things in the abstract. And when we think about things in the abstract, we're more likely to focus on positive generalities than nitty-gritty and sometimes gory details. Rosy retrospection is there to serve a purpose, as it helps us overlook negative experiences in order to keep on living. Take it from me. A life where you only remember negative experiences is debilitating. But forgetting the negative can also lead us down paths that we left in the past for a reason. Our memory is notoriously unreliable. Testimonies from eyewitnesses almost always differ in criminal cases. It's not surprising that they do. Memory changes based on our emotions, our beliefs, and how much time has passed. On social media, there is no shortage of accounts filled with people lamenting the past. A lot of them come off as innocent enough, but even more of them are projecting regressive ideas. A tweet with a nostalgic picture of America in the 80s may not seem like an issue, but then you look further into the account, discovering that the account is run by a white nationalist hoping to expel and kill hundreds of millions of Americans that are not Hitler bred. Accounts shamelessly call the America of the past, which was filled with more white people and less gay people, the peak of American civilization. It is also Twitter, so I can't say I'm surprised, but it's still disgusting. Nostalgia bait like this wants people who lived in those times, or even those who didn't, feel a longing for the past that they had, or never had. A past that was better for normal, all-American white people. Like most extremism on the internet, it's subversive in the sense that, to a more ignorant viewer, there are no hateful undertones to these posts. And so, when a mass of people are ignorantly and knowingly calling for a return to the horrible 80s, it normalizes the idea that the regressive past is better than our, albeit also shitty, present. The 2016 trend, on its own, obviously isn't comparable to a Twitter account claiming that America was better in the 50s when Jim Crow laws were still in effect. But it is still rewriting the past to seem better than it was. While some people are simply nostalgic for their younger years, much of the trend is about the perceived innocence of 2016 compared to the internet today, said Forbes. The internet wasn't as bright and cheerful as it's being remembered, but it wasn't quite as gamified and monetized as it is today either. It had more casual users posting selfies and sharing random thoughts with their followers just for the sake of it. A lot of the nostalgia that people are feeling for 2016 comes from how different the internet was back then. 2016 now seems much better than our current reality, and these feelings are coming from a place of truth. One of the biggest reasons 2016 seems better in hindsight is because it felt as though we were more connected as a culture at the time. Of course, Donald Trump was elected on rape allegations, on racism and homophobia, and we were politically divided back then, like we are now. But cancel culture, fortunately or unfortunately, didn't exist yet. Political divides didn't feel as extreme as they are now because the monoculture still existed. Looking back at the world through a pop culture lens, things were vastly different. American pop culture used to be more of a monoculture. The internet was, for one, less vast, meaning the most popular YouTubers, Markiplier, Jake Paul, PewDiePie, Zoella, Dan and Phil, Shane Dawson, and so on, were the most popular for everyone. Sure, there were niche corners of the internet, but these niche corners didn't reach the kind of popularity that the aforementioned YouTubers had. Now there's thousands of TikTokers with millions of followers each, and YouTube and the internet itself is incredibly more saturated. More than 39,000 accounts on TikTok now have at least 1 million followers, according to data from social media analytics provider SocialBlade. That's about 6,200 more than on YouTube, and nearly 16,000 more than on Instagram. This has created a fascinating subculture of influence, says Brendan Gaughan, Chief Innovation Officer at creative agency Mechanism. Many creators have a dedicated following within their niche, but they remain anonymous to the wider world, says Gaughan, who sits on VidCon's advisory board and has attended the conference since it began in 2010. Of course, the algorithm has played a massive role in this. The personalization of everyone's social media feeds, plus the vast amount of content now available online, means each of us have our own hyper-individualized social media feeds. Who and what's popular to me, my own friends likely haven't even heard of. Even the internet isn't truly global anymore. Platforms localize, governments regulate, algorithms isolate. What trends in Manila barely reaches Madrid. What's viral in Punjab never reaches Portland. The global village we were promised? It has become a digital patchwork of walled gardens, each with their own gods, memes, and microdramas. It's not just social media, though. While this is one of the clearest reasons as to why 2016 seems better than 2026, the crumbling of the monoculture goes far outside of social media, although social media and hyper-personalization has sped up the process. In 2016, most of us in America specifically knew the biggest songs. We knew the new movies. We were watching the same TV shows. We were all clued into the same things in the culture. Social media has played a key role in this hyper-personalization, but so have the extreme influx of streaming platforms, and even the course of politics over the past 10 years. I think one thing that has been occurring, but people have especially noticed over the past few years, is an extreme shift in politics. Think back to the 2016 election, if you can remember that far back. Despite the seriousness of the election, the political landscape back then felt much less serious, humorous even. Trump and his supporters were joking about crooked Hillary, and Hillary was just chilling in Cedar Rapids and getting people to Pokemon Go to the polls. That's not to say that politicians aren't doing shit like this now. Just take a look at the Kamala Brat phenomenon, or Gavin Newsom's attempts at being funny despite being a self-proclaimed lover of genocide. I think now, though, a lot of people are more resistant to this blatant unseriousness in the light of everything bad in the world. And this has made some internet users feel more doomed. Now they're looking back at 2016, believing that American politics were just better back then, that people just got along better. But in reality, this world, and this country especially, was always fucked up. Trump certainly faced a lot of resistance during his first election. There were mass protests regarding his misogyny and sexual assault allegations. But the mainstream politics of 2016 were much more liberal than leftist. They still are, of course, but remember, this was the time of Hamilton and the end of the Obama presidency, a topic which YouTuber Alexander Avila already made a great video about. We elected a black president and legalized gay marriage. What else is there to do? With some simple debates with the opposing side, we could solve anything, right? The political world had not shifted to where it is now. Not only were people not as clued into everything going on and as polarized, but the push for limited social progressivism also helped the liberal mainstream brainwash the public into thinking that everything was fine, when in reality, it wasn't. Politics is now, more than ever, pop culture. Since 2016, it is true that people have become more polarized when it comes to social issues in politics. But this isn't really a bad thing, in my opinion. We shouldn't accept Hillary Rodham Clinton as a presidential candidate. We shouldn't capitulate to those on the right who are bigots. In fact, we shouldn't accept the system as it is anymore. We never should have. The biggest issues in the world today are not easy to ignore. It's obvious that democratic politicians are not going to save us or anyone across the world from the effects of climate change, more US sanctioned wars and invasions, and hateful policies. The world was never good, but it's so much more in our face now, which makes us feel like everything is worse now, and to a certain extent, it is. In the US in 2016, transgender people were not up for political debate as they are now. The economy wasn't as bad, and ICE agents were not waltzing around assaulting and murdering people at will. But let's not act like being ignorant is the same thing as things being better. Just because trans people weren't suffering as bad doesn't mean that over 10 million Syrians weren't displaced from their homes in a brutal civil war. Just because ICE wasn't killing US civilians doesn't mean that they weren't engaging in brutality against Latino and Hispanic people in America behind the curtains. Looking back at 2016, we may feel like we were more connected then, like things were better politically than they are now, but they never were. While there certainly is a lot of bad in the world now, the world we once had was never really the world we thought it was. When I watch videos comparing 2016 pop culture to today's pop culture, or lack thereof, there was a lot of romanticizing. Were our lives in 2016 really better? Or were we just better at ignoring the horrible things in the world? Most of the nostalgia for 2016 is more so coming from a place of longing for our youth, for when we weren't as clued in and as responsible for ourselves and others. That yearning isn't really about the year itself. It's about what life felt like before everything became so performative and optimized, before being online meant building a brand, before politics consumed every feed, before the future felt permanently foreclosed. In that sense, 2016 becomes a stand-in for a broader desire, a time when things still felt lighter, even if that lightness was a product of youth than reality. The danger, of course, is that nostalgia flattens history. The death of the monoculture isn't even necessarily a bad thing. More personalization has allowed people with niche interests to find spaces for themselves online. Spaces that they may have never had access to if the internet hadn't become so vast. Plenty of bad things existed in 2016, but culturally, we were less isolated, leading people to believe that the era was better in some way, simply because social media wasn't as overwhelming. But is ignoring the bad the same as the bad never having existed? It's 2026. People are feeling nostalgic for 2016 because enough time has passed to have those warm feelings for that time. Clay Rutledge, an existential psychologist who's a leading expert in the science of nostalgia, tells NBC's Joe Fryer. People tend to be nostalgic when they're anxious about the future, or they're not sure what direction in life to take, he says. So I think this generation is dealing with those anxieties, and they're using nostalgia as a way to respond to them. Nostalgia comes in many forms outside of just a longing for 2016. Gen Xers have been wishing to return to the 80s for decades, despite the fact that the 80s were bad for almost everyone except the most privileged in the world. Clouded by their good feelings for a time past, and their memory warped by their own brain's natural functioning, they mistake the past for being better than the present. If the right person online posts about the 80s being a better time, the comments are sure to be filled with at least a dozen different kinds of bigotry. And the further back you go, the worse it gets. Nostalgia for the 50s in America leads to people unintentionally and even intentionally wishing for a time when women had barely any autonomy, and when Jim Crow laws were still in effect. I'm not saying that feeling nostalgic for these times means that deep down you want to go back to them because you've got a Hitler shrine in your house. There are some things from way back when that are, in comparison to today, better. But we can have a world where marginalized people aren't brutalized, and where the finer things in life that we long for from the past are still there. I think the most insidious thing about nostalgia is that it rids us of hope. If we feel like our present is bad, which it is, and we see the past as better in some way, then we are always stagnating. We can't see a future that's better, so we revert to the past, thinking it's somehow better in some way. But it's not progressive to regress. Huge companies weaponize our nostalgia, re-releasing the same movies over and over again, repackaging childhood snacks, old clothes, and technology in order to get us to spend on emotion. They see how unhappy people are, especially young people, and know we want to relive a better time that we long for. Agnes Arnold Forrester described it perfectly in an article for The Guardian. Expressions of nostalgia are one way we communicate a desire for the past, dissatisfaction about the present, and perhaps paradoxically, our visions for the future. Progressive as well as conservative, not just stultifying, it's creative too. And it can be creative if we make it that way. But most nostalgia trips online are regressive in nature, including this 2016 trend. 2016 wasn't the last good year, but it may be the last year where we were more ignorant, and for some, that was a better life. The danger is not in looking back, it's in forgetting to look forward. We rewrite history in our minds to fit our comfort zones. We remember the good, we forget the bad. We tell stories that make us feel safe. We are not just individuals longing for better times. We are communities, societies, even nations, rewriting reality because it's easier to remember what comforts us than what challenges us. Nostalgia does not simply reflect our memories, it edits them. It revises timelines, erases injustices, and it elevates moments that were never as perfect as we imagined them to be. Alright, that's it for me, and that's it for this video. Let me know what you think of this 2026 as a new 2016 trend. Have you been feeling nostalgic lately? And let me know what nostalgia looks like for you. I'd be really interested to hear it all. Comment down below anything you want to comment down below. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you like me, you can subscribe. I post videos about whatever I feel like talking about, so if that sounds like your thing, make sure to subscribe and turn the notification bell so you know when I post a video. I'd like to give a shout out to my Patreon members who are part of my Alpha and Delta tiers. Thank you so much to Lisbeth Ruiz and Mandy Spicer. I really appreciate your continued support. It means a lot to me, truly. Thank you so much to all of my Patreon members. If you want to become a member, the link, as always, will be down below. Anyway, I really hope you all enjoyed this video, but more importantly, I really hope I see you in the next one. I hope you're there watching it intently, that you're paying attention to me, that you're interacting with me, that you are supporting me. You're going to be there, right? Doing all those things.